A global namaste, a very good afternoon, a good morning, or a very good evening to whichever part of the globe you're joining us from. Today, MINLA is super excited to be collaborating with the Jalaram Charitable Trust from Leicester with two very important people, Mr. Pramod Bhai Thakur and Mr. Sanjay Bhai Rugani, who have agreed to collaborate with MINLA on this very interesting topic, artfully navigating through the pandemics. Today, we are blessed with a wonderful speaker, Dr. Bijna Dasani Kotak, and we are so excited that she's logged in all the way from India. Let me tell you about MINLA. MINLA means Meena and Lalit Soda. Both of us got together at the beginning of the pandemic in April 2020 to spread positive, inspirational, and peaceful, loving sessions on Zoom. We started there. To date, we have done over 55 Zoom sessions and spread the motivational inspiration throughout the globe, for which we are very, very thankful to the audience and to the speakers. And as I said, today, we have a wonderful speaker, Dr. Bijna Kotak Dasani. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She serves the board of the Inclusive Companies Network, the FinTech Connect, CIO Net, Generation Success, and Kajiego. Bijna has addressed audiences globally for Deloitte, Edinburgh DataFast, Amazon, Sky, Lloyd's Banking Group, Every Women in India, the Next Generation Project, and the collaborations go on with the speaking engagements that she does. Particularly, she's featured in various publications, including the Citywire Tech Travels podcast in 2021, and the following books expired to 2021, The Ultimate Professional Networks Guidebook, Volume 1, and Womenkind, Unlocking the Power of Women, Supporting Women in 2018. She's been recognized by the Yahoo Finance and Involve People as one of the top 100 ethnic minority executives in 2021 and one of the top 100 women executives in 2020 across all the industries and global sectors. Bijna has also been appreciated and was named Britain's Rising Star, UK Women of Inspiration Awards in 2019, and in the world's top 100 women executives by Yahoo and Heroes. Again, the accolades carry on with Bijna. She is credited as one of the top 50 visionary young leaders in business by Henley Business School in 2017, and one of the 35 leading British business women under the age of 35 by Management Today. She's also included in the National Diversity Awards of 2012 and the Asian Women Achievements Award in 2010, and International Women's Day Young Achiever going back to 2006. We have a superstar with us. We have Dr. Bijna Kotak Dasani, who's going to be navigating us through the pandemics that we are all going through right now. To move on further, before we get kick-started with the MINLA Zoom session, we have our wonderful pioneer lady, Mrs. Meena Ben Khagram, who I welcome to the Zoom session, who will formally kickstart today's session. Meena Ben, if I may welcome you on the platform, please.
Jai Shri Krishna. Good evening. Oh, first I forgot. I must honor you. Bijna, beta, this is Tilak for you.
Ooh.
Thank you.
And Joka and Aarti for you.
I feel very blessed. Thank you.
And I'm going to give you nice Malaji for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the flamingo town of Nakuru, where Lake Nakuru is famous for wildlife and flamingos. Nakuru County is the one where world fastest famous runners are born here in Nakuru, counting that is like Eliud Kipchoge and others. My cute cousin, Lalit Soda, and myself, Zoom, MINLA, are super excited to welcome you all who have joined in this Zoom session and on the Facebook Live. Welcome our Nakuru son, Pramod Bhai Thakkar and Sanjay Bhai Rugani. Welcome super humble speaker, Dr. Bijna Kotak, Dasani. And I think I know her from many, many years. Bibi and Dwana, let me introduce you, our backbone of this session. MC, Dr. Lalit Soda. He is a chiropractor. He is a professional speaker. He is an author. And he is a recipient of many, many awards. But his humbling says, don't mention any. Can't help to say the recent one he has been awarded, and that is a Marwa Journalist Award. Over to you, Lalit Bhai.
Thank you very much, Minaben. Thank you. Moving the program forward on the MINLA Zoom session, I'm going to invite a very prominent person, Mr. Sanjay Bhai Rugani, who comes as a representative from the Jalaram Jayanti program that they had done, the Jalaram Charitable Trust. And Sanjay Bhai was heavily involved in the committee when they did the annual global Jalaram Jayanti virtually, which was done in 2020. A man with many, many credentials himself. He's instrumental in the acquisition of the Sriji Dham Haveli that is based in Harrow in London. He is a very proactive gentleman with charities and communities, and especially in the COVID pandemic time, he has had an instrumental role in helping great large communities and people on whole. He's running a full-time consultancy business with his wife, and they are absolutely amazing people who are just not work-based, but community-based and wanting to help anyone and everyone. What a human being. Sanjay Bhai, welcome on the MINLA Zoom session. On behalf of the Jalaram Charitable Trust, I request you to welcome today's speaker. Sanjay Bhai, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lalit Bhai and Meena Ben. Very much appreciate that introduction. Bijna, welcome. I'm really looking forward to hearing about the navigation through the pandemic, and I think we all are to get a little bit more insight in that. Before I sort of formally welcome you onto that part, I would just like to say a few words on behalf of the Jalaram Mandir, in that what we did last year, we celebrated 25 years, the Jalaram Charitable Trust, where Pramod Bhai was very instrumental in bringing a number of us together. That was Ajay Bhai Jobanputra, Dhiru Bhai Sangani, and myself, to promote Jalaram Bapa's ethos in regards to celebrating his humanitarianism worldwide. So we had a wonderful day in November last year. You know, from Australia to Zanzibar, the vibrations were absolutely amazing. And I think, Meena Ben, I know you're particularly involved in that in terms from Africa, as were you, Bijna, in terms of putting the mapping together on that. So it was an amazing journey for all of us. And I know Ajay Bhai was very much the backbone in regards to making sure the technology and everything else worked on there. So thank you for that. And, you know, Jalaram Bapa's ethos, as I think was summed up by Lord Jitesh Gadhia, life is not worth living without giving. And I think that is the essence by which the Jalaram Mandir in Leicester actually survives and does work. You know, to name a few sort of aspects that they do is community work. They've helped the homeless there by opening the community centre and providing meals, as well as the most, I think, phenomenal aspect, which we all need to embrace as a community worldwide, and particularly in the UK, is organ donation. And that's a massive initiative, you know, the Jalaram Trust has taken there. And on that basis, I think we all welcome Pramod today, as well as Bijna Ben, who's going to be talking about the pandemic. So thank you for that, and very much appreciate being part of this today. Thank you, Meena Ben. Thank you, Lalit Bhai.
Thank you, Sanjay Bhai. Thank you for introducing the activities of Jalaram Charitable Trust that you guys are all doing. And now I introduce Dr. Bijna Kotak Dasani to start her presentation. Bijna, welcome on the MINLA Zoom session, and we'd be delighted to hear how we can artfully navigate this pandemic.
Thank you for the warm welcome. Jai Jalaram, Jai Shri Krishna, everyone. And good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm thankful for the humbling introduction that you gave me. I don't profess to have all of the answers, but when Meena Auntie and I were discussing, what might be a useful topic for this session, we felt that a lot of us around the world are pretty much going through the same thing in different ways. And the pandemic has led to many other pandemics. So the idea is that we will do our best to try and support one another and just share some tips and insights that will help us to start from within, because a lot of what we do and don't do as humans and what sets us aside is really, what comes from within. So how do we balance that? How do we deal with pandemics throughout our lifetime? And then how do we all come together to deal with the multiple pandemics within this pandemic through small steps, small pearls of wisdom and ideas that can help. So I want this session to be a very interactive session. So I'm going to ask questions as we go along, and I'm going to ask that people basically, raise questions or raise their hands on Zoom if they're comfortable, or unmute themselves and ask questions. That's totally fine. We have about 45 minutes.
Bijna, can I interrupt you there? Sorry.
Yeah.
We will avoid anybody asking questions while your conversation is going on. If that's okay, they can post a question on the chat box, just so that it doesn't cause any interference, because they are all muted right now. Otherwise, there'll be a wavelength issue and it won't work very well. So
okay, that's fine. That's fine. So I'll be asking some questions which maybe the audience can think about, and then at the end we can talk about those, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Really, to conduct this exercise and to go through the next 40 minutes or so, the value is going to come out of a bit of introspection. Think about examples that you can relate with, things that have happened in your own homes, your own families, in your own workplaces, and see how you can perhaps apply some of this. And you may find, ways to relate to it. So questions welcome at the end. Comments can come through on the chat, and Dr. Lalit will help with those. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and you will see a couple of talking points that we're going to go through momentarily. If there's somebody that doesn't see them, please, again, just let us know through the chat. But I'm going to walk you through a few points, which hopefully, rather than me just talking through them, if you see them on screen, it may be easier for you to memorize and relate to. So pandemic, what does it mean to you and what does it mean to me? Well, I mean, the news will tell us that it's an epidemic. There's a lot happening at different points in time, to different geographies, because of the same issue, right? And we're all responding and reacting differently. Now, for some people, the pandemic is about quarantine, it's about being in a bubble, it's about dealing with COVID, it's about being in lockdown, it's about the financial implications of that, it's about the health implications of that, it's about not being able to see family and friends, and about the impact to our daily lives, not perhaps having support if you're used to support. And what it means is that it's changing how we have been living in fundamental ways. And through that, it's forcing us to change how we see things, how we behave, respond, and react to those things in fundamentally different ways. And before joining this session, I was listening to a new podcast that started on Apple TV this week by Oprah Winfrey and Prince Harry. And it's called The Me That You Don't See. So the version of us that you actually don't see. And what's interesting is they open and talk about the pandemic as almost a mirror that's magnified everything that we know about our lives today. And it's also magnified our reactions. So how we respond, how we react, how we treat others around us, how we see ourselves, and how we deal with this time of turbulence, all of that is a mirror, and that mirror is magnifying it wherever you are in the world. And all of us are perhaps a few family members or a few friends away from seeing that mirror. So we perhaps have been affected ourselves because, we've needed medication and we've gone through COVID in our households, or perhaps we've lost somebody and we've experienced grief, or perhaps our work has been affected, or our day-to-day has been affected. And so that mirror has magnified a number of things, but particularly highlights, from my perspective, our value system, right? And our value system and our ideologies towards humanity are what set us apart. And I'm going to talk about how the fact that we are human gives us privilege and power. And really, we need to tie that privilege and power together in a sensible, thoughtful way to be able to navigate through this, but also help people around us navigate through this. But it starts from within. So you've had a lovely introduction on me, and we've had a lovely introduction for Dr. Lalit, or Lalit Uncle as I call him. And we all have, although he looks too young, we all have our narratives, right? So ultimately, narratives are things that give us definition. They set us apart, they call us leaders or individuals or whatever we are, right? So for me, you heard about some awards and you heard about some books and things that I have been mentioned in. But that tells you a little bit about one of my narratives. If I take the title of the podcast that Prince Harry and Oprah Winfrey are doing, The Me You Don't See, there are so many things about the last 36 years of my life that we didn't talk about because it's not appropriate for today or for the purpose of this session. But what I'm trying to get at here is a number of things make us whole: the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's not just the highlights and the achievements that make us whole. And we shouldn't just talk about those, because what that does is that makes us shy from being authentic, right? And so we should learn to embrace our competing narratives. So what you heard was my positive narrative. There will probably be many other not so positive or not so easy narratives, more challenging narratives of my life, which if you heard, you would think, how is that the same person? And I'm sure all of you have been there. So I'm going to talk about some examples. With the things that we don't talk about, we may have had an illness, or we may have had a financial loss, or we may have lost somebody in our family. Those become our crucibles. And particularly in the Indian community, we tend to hide them, right? Because we are taught to be strong and to get up and to get on with it. But actually, what the pandemic has taught us is that there is strength in talking about our crucibles. You're strong to get up and rise from your issues and just face the world and get on with it every day. And those people are heroes and role models. And, there are lots of people on this call that I know have been through a lot of things in their life, and they just get on with it. But actually, if we understand the experiences that have pushed these people to their limits, forced them to look at themselves, introspect, really work on their character, their value system, those are the things that define us. And that's what makes us human. And I think that's really important. And then all of this, talking about the things that aren't on our CVs or aren't talked about when we're giving a speech, the things that define, the intense experiences that define what we've been through in life, they make us authentic. And when we are authentic, we can exercise empathy, we can exercise being vulnerable, and we can exercise being void of judgment. And by that, I mean not judging others, but also not judging ourselves, right? And when we are void of judgment, that's when we are resilient to adversity. And the pandemic is adversity in every form possible. So these are the things that set us apart. We have to get comfortable from within. So I'm going to give you an example that I used for a presentation I did a couple of times last year as we were going through the pandemic. And I'm going to just ask you to think about things, right? And I'll share the responses I got, and we can talk about this at the end. But this is a persona. So this is a character who grew up in a single parent family setting, went through education, through the state education system. At 16, started working full-time and did all of her education except 1 year after that at night school, and comes from a pretty small town, right? So this is a story of one character. Now, this character will have a lot of factors that have affected her life or his life, whatever it is, right? Let's say it's a her because I'm talking about diversity and inclusion a lot right now, and I think a her is a good one. So if this girl has been through these things, there is some expectations around where her life may take her later on. I'm now going to go to the next person who is a contrasting personality. This person speaks multiple languages. This person went to Ivy League university, went to Cambridge or Oxford or wherever. This person has lived and worked in 3 continents, has a lot of international exposure. This person, like me, is supporting different non-profits and doing board work. And this person has worked for some of the largest corporates in the world in their career. Now, let's assume that these two, say they're girls or guys, whatever. Let's assume that they are the same age and they are from the same background, right? A lot of us are, I'm going to say, maybe let's assume they're like us, right? Gujarati, same age, both come from, being born around the same time, similar religion or culture, but very different lives, right? One comes from a small town, single parent, state education system, working from 16. This one, been around the world, lived and worked in 3 continents, Ivy League education, connected to lots of big corporates. They will have very different lives, right? Now, to be the first person or the second person, as human beings, we are wired to make some assumptions about the similarities and the differences. So we may assume that to be person 1 or person 2, your family situation is A, B, or C. So here we may say, this person went to an Ivy League university. This person has been around the world, speaks many languages. Maybe this person had both parents paying for and sponsoring education and everything. We'll talk about wealth. We make assumptions. If somebody speaks more languages and has had more international exposure, we assume they come from a more well-to-do background than person 1. Education, again, Ivy League versus coming from a small town and doing night school. Again, we make assumptions. The first person is perhaps less educated than the second person. Exposure, again, this person has been around the world. It speaks for itself. This person comes from a very small town. So again, they have less exposure to perhaps life. Personality, if you've been around the world, you're going to be outgoing, you're going to be an extrovert, you're working with big corporates, you're going to have an alpha personality. This person, modest background, state education system, might be a little bit more timid or shy than this person, okay? And then finally, lifestyle. Well, I mean, this person's jet setting all the time, right? That's clear. This person is probably earning well if they've been with some of the largest corporates on the planet. This person is clearly working hard, but they may not be on the same level as this person because of where they started from and the journey was different. So that bit around crucibles, right? Both of these people have different things that have defined them and made them who they are. And they come from a similar age and a similar culture and a similar religion, but very different lives. As human beings, we judge. And when we judge, we make assumptions about similarities and differences. So before we go any further, I want you just to think about the fact that we are wired to judge and we are wired to think in a way that is informed by the news or views or perceptions from social situations around us and how that affects us, right? And I'm going to share another screen with you and a quick video, which I would like you just to pay attention to clearly for 5 minutes. It's just less than 5 minutes, and really go deep into what this is showing us. So if you give me just 1 second, we should see a video now.
Bijna, just to let you know that there is no music coming in and it keeps on refreshing. So the video is not all loaded or something.
I'll just try once more.
Sure.
Apologies for that. I think it may be a connection glitch, but I'll
That's
try
okay.
once more.
Sure,
If
sure,
we don't get it, I'll just continue without it, but I will just give it one shot. Okay.
sure, sure. Let's try that. Sometimes the Wi-Fi and the bandwidth can get a bit low with all these things, so no problem.
Apologies for that. So
No issues. It's the virtual world. It's something to be expected, isn't it?
technology is a blessing, but we do need to, yes, learn to navigate. Let me just forward to where we were at because I don't think I need to.
Sure. Okay, so there is still no music coming in, yeah? The music is being disconnected.
Okay, can you see the video?
Yeah, we can see the video.
We just pay attention to the words. I think that should.
Sure. Yeah, Bijna, I've just had a couple messages that have come through that the video is also being disconnected and some viewers can't see it very well either.
Okay, okay. In that case, we probably need to stop this video.
I'm sure it's a good one. If you share that, I'm sure people will get a good view of it. But maybe what we can do is we can probably just continue with the chat, if that's okay, the talk.
Yeah, of course, we can do
Perfect.
that. I'll go back to the presentation.
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the joys of a virtual world. We get some connection, we get disconnected, and don't forget, India has recently been through a huge cyclone. So that has probably affected some network areas also. So Bijna, thank you for that, but I think we'll continue with the lecture and maybe we can get the video at some other time. Thank you, Bijna.
Yeah, thank you and apologies for that.
No worries at all.
So I'm gonna continue with the presentation. I'm gonna try and explain to you why that video is important, right?
Sure.
What this video talks about is, or what it illustrates is a bunch of people in the Cleveland Clinic in hospital. And I was on a Harvard Business School lecture last year where I saw this video. When the professor said that what distinguishes true leaders from, what distinguishes true and exceptional leaders from regular leaders, and what will become the most important factor as we go forward into this technology-enabled world where humans are more connected than ever through technology, but more disconnected from each other physically, is empathy, right? And it shows us basically a video of what's happening at the Cleveland Clinic in the US, where people are going in for different treatments. And you can't, there's no words, there's just music, but you can read what they're thinking or what they're feeling. And you have a situation where a father is about to have a treatment and he's worried that he's going to miss his daughter's wedding. Somebody has lost a member of their family and the doctor is thinking, how do I express the news to them? Somebody else is about to go in for an important surgery, but is thinking in the back of their head, how am I going to pay for this? Somebody else has just been diagnosed with a type of cancer and is not sure how it's going to affect them or their family. And really what this video forces us to do, and at the very end it says, you know, would you treat them differently if you knew what they knew? And that's really powerful. So would you treat them differently if you knew what they knew, right? And going back to anyone in our lives, right? Our friends, our family, our spouses, our children, our parents, whoever, when we are engaging with them, right? During this pandemic or through other pandemics in our lifetime, when we're having conversations, we need to take a moment to pause and say, would we treat them differently if we understood what was going on in their mind and their heart? Because they know and they feel something that we do not understand, we do not know, and we do not feel. And how do we tap into that, right? Don't just judge what you see on the outside. your narrative, as we talk about here, your narrative doesn't define you, but we have a responsibility to dig deeper and to be authentic and to say, how would I treat this person differently? Do they need a bit more care? Do I need to be a bit more sensitive? Do I need to be a bit more thoughtful? And you know, if you knew how somebody felt, would you behave differently, was the question in that lecture. And everyone said, yes, of course. If I knew that that person, if I was an employee, a colleague of, say, that person who just found out that he had to have surgery and he didn't know how to pay for it, and he came into the office afterwards, of course I would treat him differently if I knew that that was a worry on his mind. But the problem is we don't talk about mental health. We don't talk about the worries on our mind because we are taught just to get up and get on with it and be strong. And that's where the disconnect happens. So how we perceive people is important, but it's also important then to think about how people perceive us. Do they perceive us as ignorant or not caring or not in tune enough with empathy or compassion? And is that because we're just so busy going in our day-to-day? When we were having you know, the technology check of this session 15 minutes before we started, you know, I was saying, yeah, I go from Zoom to Zoom to Zoom all day. That's my working life. I'm just going from meeting to meeting to meeting. But actually, you know, in that time, I can put my hands up and say, I didn't get a chance to think, what are people thinking of me? Because sometimes I turn my screen off because I'm so tired, or I want to have my lunch, or I'm trying to deal with another email or something in the background. But the other person might think, well, is that person not engaging? Is Bijna being ignorant, or am I not interesting to Bijna? Why am I, you know, why is Bijna not fully engaged in this session? And if that person has a personal situation going on in their life, they may be a lot more sensitive. So I may be indirectly affecting somebody in a really negative way without even knowing it. And I'm not judging or labeling, I'm just focusing on myself. The other thing is, if we think about stereotypes or we judge or label, we can actually harm people's emotional well-being, which then translates into physical symptoms like anxiety attacks, fear, you know, lack of confidence. And that in itself can also be quite devastating. So again, when we're navigating through our own lives and through the pandemics in our own lives, or even this bigger pandemic, we have to appreciate and know that a lot of people are going through pandemics of their own. And it's not just during the COVID era, it's on a day-to-day basis. Life happens to all of us. So the pandemic has basically changed a lot of personas, right? It's raised, if you look at the news anywhere in the world, we've seen a lot about the rising gap between the rich and the poor this past year. We've seen a lot about socioeconomic demographics. I was talking to somebody last week and I said that I had been reading that 84% of households in India are now spending 20% less on food and groceries than they were last year. That's because people are losing incomes. 60 million people in India have gone from a middle income demographic to now a poor demographic as classified by the UN. People are being affected financially in different ways, and that affects households and families in different ways. We obviously have obesity, and then we have malnutrition, we have extremes. So there are now more obese people in the West, in America and in England and in Europe than there ever has been on record. And the majority of those are actually women. I read that last week. Physical health. A lot of people have developed physical health elements through the pandemic that were not recognized or not recorded so much before, either because of COVID or because of impact to mental health. There's a direct correlation between impact to mental health and physical health. So these are some of the smaller pandemics that we're all dealing with. And then there's humanity, right? We're all so connected and we're all selflessly serving more than ever before. I just saw last week, you know, the amount of drives for oxygen cylinders in India. And I know Pramod Uncle and the Jalaram community have been doing a lot to raise funds for India. There has been money raised for ambulances from Leicester. There's a lot happening, but at the same time, there's a lot that's not happening on the ground. And so as humanity, again, the gap is getting wider. The gap between the rich and the poor, the gap between the obese and the malnutrition, the gap between the connected and the ones that are doing a lot, and the gap between those that are not doing a lot or are doing things that are causing more issues. And so it's changed personas of all of us around the world. And what we have to do is we have to pause and we have to be authentic and we have to focus on self-awareness. That piece around, if I'm on a Zoom and I'm turning my screen off because I'm hungry or having a coffee, what's the person on the other side thinking? Is it affecting them? Because are they one of the households that now doesn't have enough money for food? And are they thinking this person is a leader and is ignoring me and oh my God, everything is just building up? we also have to self-regulate. We have to differentiate what's going on in the world between what's going on within us internally. And then motivation. How do we motivate ourselves when the world has got so much chaos all around us? How do we find the will to get up and be happy and be positive and share that with other people? How do we be thankful and find grace? And when we're finding grace, how do we empathize? So that piece around the video, would we treat somebody differently if we knew what was going on in their minds and their hearts? And that translates into our social skills and how we behave, right? And I think the skills for increasing self-awareness, I don't need to talk about them here, but there are some studies, and the studies say that the more we share about ourselves first, the more other people feel comfortable sharing about themselves. That then becomes the norm of reciprocation. When you do that, so if I say, I went through COVID 5 months ago and this was my experience, then the opposite person is more likely to say, you went through it? I thought I couldn't talk about it because everyone's saying it's not the thing to talk about, but let me tell you what happened. And then you start to reciprocate, and then you give feedback. That calms the anxiety, and just knowing that somebody is listening really makes you feel a lot lighter, right? And one of our deepest needs as human beings, and this is as per science, not as per me, is to be fully seen and heard. So every human being has an innate desire to be fully seen and heard, right? And through our increasing our self-awareness, we can help people around us achieve that, but we can also achieve it for ourselves. So using this template or this framework, we'll also go back to a disclosure about the two personas, and I'll start with me. So I'll talk about myself as well. So we talked about this person, single parent family, state education system, age 16, started working full time from a small city, and this person, multiple languages, Ivy League education, has lived in different continents, and has a corporate background. We as human beings, and I'm sure all of you around this Zoom would have made very different judgments or assumptions about the two different girls that I described. I'm going to start with my disclosure or my self-disclosure, which is I am that person. I am persona 1 and I am persona 2. All the things you saw there were about me. I am the girl from Leicester. I am the girl who went to state education system. I am the girl who started studying at 16 and did all my education at night school. But you would not have known that from the introduction that Lalit uncle gave me, or from the introduction that Meena auntie has been sharing about me, or from what Pramod uncle has given me an award for before. But my mom, Nita, who's on the call today, she knows that. You would have only identified me with the second persona, which is what the world sees on the outside. But by sharing that with you, I'm giving you an example that it's okay and it's important to talk about where you truly come from and what truly defines you, because this is all leading to our inner well-being, our mental health, and channeling our attitude and our values in a way in which we can not only navigate our own internal pandemics, but those that are happening in the world that are external to us that we actually cannot influence, but we can influence our responses and reactions to them. And in terms of the pandemic as well, I just want to give you some facts, right? That there's a lot going on in the world around it. The UN did a report recently that said that 90% of men and women post-pandemic hold some sort of bias against females. There's a lot going on in the gender space. Women are losing, roles in the working world. We have a lot of examples where people are being pushed to poverty that I've talked to you about. And the report found that there is no country in the world with gender equality. Now, at a time where we're so connected and we're so aware and we're so educated as a global nation, and I don't mean with degrees, but I mean with access to information, I think by being authentic and saying all of us have had to go through some journey or something, and it's helped us grow and evolve, we should be able to talk about all of the pandemics and help each other grow and evolve. So this is where I want to pause again, because Deepika Padukone did something really brave a few years ago. She said, I'm not ashamed to talk about what's going on with me internally, and I'm dealing with anxiety. I'm a Bollywood superstar, and a lot of you will know her. I am achieving amazing things, but on days I don't feel like I want to get up. I feel empty from inside. And this is where she wasn't talking about what she was feeling. She wasn't talking about that aspect of being human and dealing with the pandemic within her own heart and mind. And then she finally dealt with that. She took help, she accepted professional help. accepted that it was okay to talk about mental health, to deal with different pandemics and the anxiety she had going on. And she set up a foundation called Live, Laugh, Love. And I'm going to try again, very bravely, to open another video. And if you can't see it, let me know, we'll stop. But if we can get through 2 minutes of it, I think it tells a very important message. So bear with me 1 second, and I'm going to try and share this with you.
Was tough was not being able to talk to anyone because I don't think anyone understood what I was experiencing. So if I'd say I'm not feeling, and I didn't know myself initially how to describe it. I just, all of these terms of, I knew what I was feeling, but I don't think I was able to communicate entirely what I was feeling. Like I knew I had this pitish feeling in my stomach. I knew too that I'd be scared to wake up. I didn't want to wake up. I wanted to always, I found sleep. I found comfort in sleep because I felt like that was my escape. And like waking up was a struggle. I didn't enjoy. And in fact, I think that's something I'm still scared of. I don't like the sound of an alarm. So yeah, I think waking up was tough because I didn't want to face a day. Every day I had to wake up because I had to wake up, do something. I didn't enjoy that feeling of waking up to an alarm and then going to work. I think I had to do it. I was working every day, and there were days when, I mean, of course, I think every day was a challenge to sort of understand. I didn't know how the day was going to pan out for me. I didn't know if, I think I'd be extremely conscious of being surrounded by people because if I needed to break down, I didn't know where I could do that. And so I think I was always conscious of where I was going to be, although that was not in my control because I think in my profession, I'm expected to be at different places at different times and no 2 days are the same. There's no pattern to any day. So I think there was always that fear of wondering where I'm going to be. What if I have that feeling of low? What if I need to break down? And not knowing where to sort of have that moment to myself. And I was also, I think, conscious of people seeing it on my face. So it was a lot of effort, I think, to I think show that everything was okay because it was not. And I think to keep smiling or to keep giving energy to people around me to kind of overcompensate to show that everything was okay or that I was feeling okay, I think was extremely exhausting. Before, of course, before it happened, in the time that I was suffering or struggling, I wish that I had come across that one person who said, I think I know what it is. And it probably just made the whole process much easier. So I felt like if I shared my
glasses. I didn't even know she had a spare glasses.
We are not aware of what
Bijna, we seem to be getting most of the conversation,
they're not
however, it
feeling their
is
best.
cutting off.
Yeah, I think somebody was speaking in the background, but I've muted everyone now, so we'll recontinue.
Okay.
For not feeling correct or feeling low or feeling unwell or whatever you want to call it. But I think it was important for me to break that down and to say 1 second, this is what are you experiencing what I'm experiencing? Because this is what I went through. And I think that's what I wanted, because like I said, I think for me, the minute I understood the term depression, it just made it so much easier to deal with.
Okay, so
Great.
so the reason that was important is because, again, it leads us back to why it's important to understand what's going on. The pandemic isn't just what's going on outside, it's what's going on inside too. And to Deepika's point, it just takes one person to understand. One person can change a life. And going back to the message of the earlier video, if you knew what that person next to you or in front of you was going through, would you treat them differently? So many of you probably haven't seen that avatar of Deepika, and you were probably surprised to see it like I was when I first saw it. But we're all human, and ultimately that point that I made about the human need to be heard, but to be heard without judgment and to be heard without fear of assumptions or rejection is really important. Growing up, I didn't want to talk about the fact that I went to some of the state education system schools that I did, or I didn't want to talk about the fact that I was, working full time and studying at night school. But beyond the point, you have to appreciate your journey and the strength that you find from that and the support that you have from people that help you through that journey. And you have to say, that's okay. That's actually what got me to where I am today. And the next person also needs that. They need someone to say, that's okay. So we can't all go and solve the coronavirus problem. We can't go and solve the economic problems that exist because of it. We can't solve the health problems that exist with it. But I can tell you now that in the past 1.5 years through the pandemic, every single family, and this is not me, it's the data again, every single family will have had at least one person that has felt some level of anxiety or some level of inadequacy from within, or some level of fear of being judged or not being able to share how they truly feel. And so my point is that if we start to listen, and we listen loudly, and we encourage people by saying, I understand, I'm going to talk about myself in an authentic way, you can talk about yourself in an authentic way, I'm not going to judge you, I'm not going to label you. We can help create a better environment amongst ourselves. And if we can help change the life of one person next to us in a positive way, that then becomes a ripple or a compound effect, and we end up changing thousands of lives without even knowing it, right? So it starts from within. I'm going to go back to my presentation for a few more minutes. And I want to give this a little bit more structure before we go into questions and wrap up. So the next piece here is around, I call it 5 steps, or at least I've seen these work. So they're based on my observations, but there are 5 steps, right? There's the emotional aspect of dealing with the pandemic that starts from within. There's the physical aspect. Some people may have a spiritual aspect. There's the mental aspect that the Deepika told us about and the other video taught us about, right? But if we can help, first of all, channel our own inner emotional, physical, spiritual, mental aspects, we can then help people around us do that. Think about the life jacket strategy. So if you're about to get off a plane because it's going to crash, you've got to put on your life jacket first before you can save somebody else. And until you figure out your own aspects and you fully get comfortable with who you are and how you think and why you're wired the way you are, you're not going to be able to help anyone else put on their their life jacket and help them. Our judgment, our confidence, our self-esteem, all of these things can become so clouded so quickly by what's going on outside and externally that we really need to focus and zoom in internally, and we need to hold each other accountable to doing this. So the first step is balance. The second is, we are not our narratives or our crucibles. I am not the narrative of the awards that you heard about. I'm also not the narrative of the girl that was 16 and started working full time that you heard about. I am the person that's in front of you today, and I choose who that person is based on my value system, my decisions, my actions. In the same way, you have to contain your mind over matter. What's happened to you does not define you. How you respond and react to what happens to you, and how you help other people respond and react to what happens to them, is really what helps define a better you. So focus. Third is emotional intelligence. And I talked about this when I talked about the Harvard lecture, right? Emotional intelligence as human beings, that's why we're different. That's why we're privileged. That's our power. If we pay attention to balancing our energies and strengthening our own identity and character, we can help other people do that. And there's an example here of I'm trying to reflect daily about my choices, where I spend my time, because it's all energy, right? And it's important energy. And also, you know, Sanjay Bhai gave an example here to Baba's ethos, which is all about, you know, a life is not worth living without giving. Well, you don't have to give materialism. You can give energy. You can give a listening ear. You can give a hand that says, I'm going to hold your hand and give you strength. These are different ways of giving. And so this is how we can help each other navigate through this pandemic. Step 4 is own it. Don't let other people influence you. If you hear something about the person sitting next to you from outside, it's noise. If you know that that person is a person in need, or that person is a person that's caring, or that person is somebody that you want to stand by, do it. Do not be influenced by external factors, because again, you have to own your judgments, your decisions, and the repercussions of those. And 5, all of this comes back to being authentic. When we fix our identity, and we start to do what's right for us without feeling like we need to live up to false expectations, opinions, stereotypes, stigmas, that doesn't define us. What defines us is our values, our principles, and our morals. And that's our ethic palette, right? So when we're authentic and true, we attract people who we need to either support with our energies or people who are good for our energies. And we become resilient. And I think more than ever through this pandemic and all the different things it's thrown at the entire world, we have to be resilient, not only for ourselves, but to help those that are suffering. And then this is my favorite one, right? It's all about integrity. You have to do the right thing if you have the right value palette. But really, integrity is not about doing the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing. So we have the Jalaram Mandir here. They're not doing the right thing because they want to be recognized for it. They're doing it because it's the right thing to do. They're doing it when nobody's watching. And I think that's the beauty. When you do the right thing when nobody's watching, that's really where the magic happens for me. And I think that's the one thing that we have to keep in our minds and in our hearts when we're choosing peace, because our mind is a factory or even a production line of thoughts. The news and everything that's going around us is another production line of thoughts and information. These thoughts then manifest. And I think what we have to do is we have to own and use our power and our privilege. Now, our privilege is our knowledge, our perspective, and our ability. It's not material. Like I said, it can be sitting next to the person that you know and you love and you want to hold their hand. But our privilege is also our intellect, right? The emotional intellect to say, that person has something going on in their heart and their mind that I don't know, and I need to get to the bottom of it and I need to help them through it. And when we can do that, that integrity and that privilege combined become our power. And so using that power to navigate ourselves or others through this pandemic or other pandemics, I think is part and parcel of the privilege of being human, but I also think it's a responsibility. So on that note, you know, be responsible, but be brave. And always try to create the highest, grandest vision possible for your life, because we truly become what we believe. And we can do that not only for ourselves, but for people around us. And this is a quote from Oprah Winfrey that I really like and I try to stand by. Of course, we're all human, but I think it's one that definitely picks me up and I like to circle back to. So that's it for me. And I think I can hand over to Lalit Uncle for next steps and questions.
Wow, Bijna, that was an amazing presentation. Thank you very much. I think this is just super information that you've shared with us, how to artfully navigate through the pandemic, and it's really good points that you brought on. Couple questions have come up before we move on to our next session, which is the rapid fire round. And the question that came up is, it's so great that, Bijna, we've been on the Zoom session, we've got technology. we've been able to communicate like this. You are currently based in India. What about those people who are living on the streets? How are we going to give them the motivation, the strength, the knowledge to go through this pandemic? Because vast majority there are the poor people. Us, where we have the advantage and we're thankful of it, that we have all these connections, we can read, write, and get involved in these kind of conversations. What would you think, in your opinion, should be done for those people?
And thank you for asking this question. You know, you're right. It's something that keeps me up at night a lot of the time, because we're living in a world where a lot of the press headlines have been, right, it's a privilege to be alive at this point in time. If you're alive, you definitely are privileged because you have access to healthcare, you have a roof over your head. The sad reality is that those people are being affected by this pandemic most in extremes. If we think about the extreme economic impact, the extreme lack of access to medical care, the extreme lack of connectivity to one another because they may not be able to afford, you know, certain things or devices, and that's really sad. Now, you know, there are more, unfortunately, there are more people in the poverty bracket as defined by the United Nations on this entire planet, not just in India, than there are people in the middle income segment in the world globally, right? So there are more poor people in the world than there are in the middle class or middle income and above segment. And so that means that there isn't a one-on-one kind of activity that can be undertaken or sponsorship that can be undertaken. But what we can do is we can lend or extend our arms a little bit further than we would otherwise, right? And I think it starts from within. So if you can help a few in your community, right, then that can motivate somebody next to you to help a few in their community, and somebody next to you to motivate a few in their community, and really step out and make a difference. And not all of us can't change the whole world, but the whole point of what I was saying earlier is if you can change one life, it takes one person to change one life. If you can be that one person to change one life, the probability is you're changing the life of a family, right? And I can tell you, in my life, there have been some really great people and not some amazing people. And we all have our ups and downs, and I've had mine in life. But where there has been that one person that's been positive and a helping hand to say, I'm going to help you through this, that has changed my life for the better, right? And that has given me motivation. And I think if all of us can be that to one person, we can help their family. So for example, if you can educate, if you can at this point say, let me educate a girl in a family where nobody's working and they're living on the brink of poverty. By educating her, you're not just giving her a short-term solution, but you're giving her an income and you're helping her family move out of the entire poverty bracket they're in, right? If you're saying, let me help fix the health of one person who is, you know, the breadwinner in the family and is the only person that works and right now hasn't gotten vaccinated, but let me sponsor that person's vaccination because they can't afford it, even though they may have a slot. That's you helping an entire family by helping one person. And I think all of us are more than capable of helping at least one person. So my perspective is we should all try to help at least one person as often as we can.
Brilliant. What a wonderful answer. Thank you. Yeah, help one and that will just go on and others will help others. So that's a great point. What really is also interesting that a question has come up on the chat box, Bijna, is people are working behind the scene all the time. There's so many people, like, let's just take today's example with the Jalaram Charitable Trust, that people like Pramod Bhai, people like Sanjay Bhai are dedicating selfless service for a humankind. Yeah, they give, they don't stop. But sometimes the question has come up is they do get tired. Doing things behind the scene, doing things when no one is watching, it does wear people down sometimes.
So I can relate to that on a lot of levels.
Yes.
And there are a lot of selfless people on this call, right? Selfless service to the world, selfless service to your own family, right? And I'm going to talk about my mom again because she's on the call, but she selflessly, you know, she worked day and night to educate 3 kids on her own at a time where there was no technology, no Google Maps, no support. You know, the UK is very different to India, where you can have house help and driving help and all of that. it's selfless, right? So you can be selfless to your family, you can be selfless to society. But if you're choosing to be selfless, that's a choice in line with your value system. And yes, if we all get tired because we're all human. When you get tired, it's important to accept and acknowledge that. There's no shame in saying I'm tired. It's important to take, and I talked about this earlier, you have to take responsibility for your actions. So you must also know when it's time not to stop doing the right thing, but to refuel and rebalance your energy. And that's what it comes down to, right? Find help, find support. It's okay to take time out and say, I've got to focus on my mental, physical well-being. I've got to be there for my family as well as society at large, and do that. And I think the more you nurture yourself and the more you tell your story about what you're doing selflessly, the more people will come forward and say, well, let me help you. That sounds interesting, right? Let me see if I can get somebody to help you with that. Let's get another pair of hands. And the saying goes, many hands make light work. And again, I know this is easier said than done, because these people who work selflessly all the time are of a personality where they really, really want to make a difference. And they feel that that time that they take out for themselves should be spent on making a difference. But that's where we have to wire ourselves a little bit differently. We have to focus on our inner engineering, and we have to say it's only when, and again, I'm going to go back to Oprah. And I was talking to my auntie earlier who follows Brahma Kumaris, right? And she said this line to me, which I said, yeah, but I heard Oprah say this 15 years ago, auntie, so this is really fascinating. What she said is that they get taught in Brahma Kumaris to be full of themselves. And what Oprah said 15 years ago was, I am going to be full to the brim of myself. And what that means is you have to fill yourself up with energy. And that energy has to be refueled. It's like putting petrol in a car. You're not going to be able to keep going at 100 miles an hour. You have to stop and you have to refuel, and you have to do the things that make you happy. That could be spending time with your family, sleeping, making sure you're having meals on time. But you have to fill up your own cup and be full to the brim, in Oprah's words, or even in my auntie's words, before you can start distributing energy. And I think that balance is important. So if we can't do it ourselves, we probably need somebody in our homes or our families to say, okay, I'm going to hold you accountable. 10 p.m. is your cutoff, or Sunday is your day off, and you need to refuel your energy.
Brilliant. Well answered. Thank you very much, Bijna, for that. One more question comes up from our dear Pramod Bhai, and he has a wonderful question, and that's so true, that we are hearing that the middle class in India cannot go out and ask for support. How do we identify those people, and how do we go to those people who need the help? Because I know the current climate in India is pretty dire. How would we be able to do that?
It's very difficult. I think, look, I'll share examples with you, people that I have been talking to and kind of connecting with professionally and personally in the past few weeks. There was a girl last Sunday whose father was taken ill, and suddenly his organs failed. And, you know, everybody that I know and everybody that she knows did everything they could in their power to help him. But ultimately, COVID is as such that no matter how much you throw at the system and how much you try to help, she sadly lost him this morning. I also have an auntie that I lost a week ago, and she battled COVID for 27 days, and she was COVID clear, and she was about to be discharged, and she struggled for oxygen. Now, in some situations, as human beings, we can influence and we can help. But in other situations, even if we do everything within our power, we remain helpless and powerless. And that's the paradox of this whole environment. So I think the first thing that's important is that piece around emotional support and emotional intelligence, right? People don't want to talk about it because they're just so busy running from pillar to post. They've got bills to pay, they've got jobs to do. In some societies here, so society meaning people live in apartment blocks, right? And each set of apartment blocks is called a society. And there are people who I know who are young who are being called to graveyards, to makeshift graveyards, to help with funerals because there's not enough people, there aren't enough places in crematoriums. These people are not sleeping because they're thinking, well, what if I get COVID from helping somebody in my community who's passed away, and I transmit that to my kids or my spouse? Or what if it means I have to take time off work, and then, you know, I can't have my vaccination if I get COVID? Or what if ultimately I die? And so there's a lot of chaos in people's minds about financials, about protecting their families, about protecting their own health. And I think the first thing we can do is, every situation is different, whether it's middle class, whether it's different sociographic segments. We're all going through these similar challenges. But I think the first thing we can do is say, where do you need help? Money is not always the answer. And quite often we're finding that people need to be able to talk about what's happening so that they can think rationally and that they can get some moral support. So if you can't give physical support, if you can't give material support, from my perspective and having been here throughout the entire pandemic, the one thing that's lacking is moral support. If people are struggling for a hospital bed, be that person that says, I'm gonna stop what I'm doing and I'm going to help you. I'm going to take out an hour and call 15 hospitals and see if I can help you get a bed. Or if you need an oxygen ventilator, let me call people and see if I can help you find that. I think that kind of moral support, or when people are grieving, giving them some strength to get through it, I think that is most important right now. That is what people cannot give each other because they're all so busy trying to fight with the day-to-day.
Brilliant. It is a huge challenge. It is something that we will all have to go through and navigate through the pandemic. Bijna, thank you for sharing those wonderful points on artfully navigating through the pandemic. Really, really good. Yes, Sanjay Bhai, it is moral and emotional support that is needed. That's just dropped on the chat box. Thank you for those comments. Bijna, now we move on to the next section of our MINLA Zoom session, which is a quick rapid fire round. It is a short statement, a short question, a short answer, or a short statement in return. We have about 20 questions. We'd like to finish them in no less than 3, maybe 3.5 minutes. Is that okay with you, Bijna?
Yeah, that's great. I'm excited.
Brilliant. Yeah. So thank you very much and welcome on the MINLA Zoom session, the rapid fire round with Dr. Bijna Kotak Dasani. Bijna, the first one, humanity.
Kindness.
COVID-19 pandemic.
Increasing paradoxes.
Technology.
Empowering.
Social media.
Enabling.
Mental health.
Emotional well-being.
Current state of India during the pandemic.
It's truly devastating.
Empathy.
Authenticity.
Bijna, 2 motivational books that you would read.
7 Habits of Highly Successful People by Stephen Covey. I read this when I was about 18. And then A Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck, which I probably read about 12 years ago.
Brilliant. Who is your role model?
My mom.
Brilliant. 2 motivational speakers you would recommend one to listen to.
Oprah Winfrey. I've talked about her a lot today. I think she brings a lot to this type of discussion. And Brené Brown, who's an author.
Brilliant. 1 act of kindness that made you a great change in your life. What was that act of kindness?
Yeah, not judging or not being judged. And I talked about this, right? I think when you are with somebody who is not judging you or in an environment where you're not being judged, it's important. It can change a lot.
Gender discrimination.
We have to be careful of positive bias.
The lady Kamala Harris.
Inspirational.
Being in India currently, your favorite street food?
Not so much street food because we have lockdown, but I have a love of Alfonso mangoes.
Brilliant. 1 name that comes to my mind, and I have to ask you this, is Morgan Stanley.
They're setting examples.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Has a tough job.
Okay, once again, you're currently in India. Who is your favorite Bollywood actor, male?
Amitabh Bachchan.
And a female actor?
His daughter-in-law, Aishwarya Rai Bachchan.
Oh, brilliant. And Bijna, we had a list of accolades for you. Of all the awards you have won, which one's the most favorite one?
I have to see, they're all precious for different reasons.
Okay. Last but not the least is Dr. Lalit Soda's rapid fire round.
Great fun. Thank you.
Brilliant. Bijna, thank you very much for participating with us on the MINLA Zoom session with a wonderful lecture on artfully navigating through the pandemic. And before we go towards the end, thank you also for participating in the rapid fire round. And we also want to thank the most amazing community, Jalaram Charitable Trust, who've been doing such wonderful work. And humankind is being helped selflessly. We have a very important personality with us here today, Pramod Bhai Thakkar, who is selflessly, I think there's another device on somewhere which is causing some disturbance. Maybe we can only log on to one device if that's okay. Thank you. So Pramod Bhai is actually one of those personalities who is selflessly serving the mankind. He is the chair for the trustees at the Jalaram Mandir, Leicester. He's very much an acquisition consultant, a trustee also at the Vaishnav Sangh UK, a chairperson for the Jain and Hindu Organ Alliance. Above all, a very hardworking individual and dedicated in Manav Seva. That is none other than our Pramod Bhai Thakkar, who is here to give a vote of thanks and tell us a little bit about the Jalaram Charitable Trust so that the audience can be informed about it. There is still another device that has been logged on. May I request that to be switched off? Otherwise, there is a lot of echo and a lot of interference. It won't work. Okay, Pramod Bhai?
Hey, Jalaram. Lalit Bhai, thank you for the kind introduction. If I may just correct you, I'm not the chairman of CHOD, but I'm vice chairman of the CHOD. That's the China and Hindu Organ Donation, for clarification.
My apologies, Chairman. Sorry about that, Pramod Bhai.
Not to worry. All I'd say is, Bijna, I mean, it's an excellent presentation which you did. It actually brings down a couple of thoughts to me. If you don't mind, Lalit Bhai, I'll take a couple of minutes. It's like the story of a fisherman who was standing on a shore and all the fishes were coming out and some boys were walking through and they said, look, how many fishes are you going to save? And this guy took one fish from his bucket and threw it back into the river. And he said, if we all can save one fish at a time, we'd be saving the world. So just a thought which came to my mind whilst we were discussing, whilst we were talking about all this. So we all need to do a bit. I mean, at Jalaram Mandir, as you all know, and I don't mind sharing after listening to Deepika, and I'm sure some of you who are very close and dear to me, and particularly my friends and close family, do know that I went through a massive depression between March and August. And during that, even, in spite of my family, against my family's wishes, I went to Leicester to make sure that we were fully compliant. And what do we do during the COVID period? Because it wasn't fair. We had to close down the temple 3 times during the last 15 months. However, with the grace of God, and Bapa did hold my hand and say, let's start doing things. And the first event we did was the Jalaram Jayanti Worldwide, which, all of you are aware of. I mean, we had 200 temples around the world, attended by almost over 1 million people on social media over the 2 days. And that's where I've been so grateful. That's where I think Bijna helped me, Sanjay helped me, Dhrubai Sangani helped me, Ajay helped me. And Bapa just leads the way. So thereafter, we've done we've done in our own ways. How do we keep our devotees busy? Through social media. We hosted the Bapu's Katha, and we've been doing as much as possible every Thursday bhajans to keep our devotees going. We just, as Sanjay or somebody mentioned, we just delivered 2 ambulances in Rajkot on Thursday, which was Bapa's day. However, I would like to say that pandemic has been difficult, but there's somebody who's holding up our hands up there. And I can say for sure that Bapa is there to help all of us to get on. I mean, if I may just talk about Bijna, for instance. I didn't know Bijna. I saw her credentials and just invited her in 2019 at the Jalaram Mandir and thought she deserved an award. Since then, she's been part of the Jalaram Mandir. She's been always supportive. Even during the Jalaram Jayanti Worldwide, she played a major role with us. So we are very fortunately, Bapa just brings the right people. He brought in Sanjay, he brought in Dhirubhai Sangar, he brought in Ajay. So, Bapa has been very grateful. And if you do believe in in any religion and have faith, they do take you through. As far as, for instance, we're also doing the organ donation thing, which is a big thing at the moment. Obviously, in India, it's the food. Here people don't need food. So we're actually bridging this gap through the Jord and the Leicester Midlands office, which we're opening, where Hindus are shying away from donating organs. Hence, there's a 2-year gap between the host community and the Hindus getting organs, a gap which we're all trying to bridge.
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe there is that network connection where the bandwidth or the Wi-Fi must have gotten unblocked. Thank you very much, Pramod Bhai. Your screen has frozen on, so if you'll wait for 30 seconds and if you can connect. But ladies and gentlemen, we are truly thankful to Jalaram Charitable Trust for joining us on the MINLA Zoom session for today's session with Dr. Bijna, Kotak, Dasani. Pramod Bhai was talking about organ donation. Pramod Bhai was also talking about the ambulance and the support that the Jalaram Charitable Trust is doing. Guys, I highly encourage, if you all want to get involved, please connect with Pramod Bhai, Sanjay Bhai, with the Jalaram Charitable Trust. They will give you all the information. Details are available online. But if you want to connect with Pramod Bhai, please do so, and Sanjay Bhai, so that you can get more information on the organ donation and the help and all the good work that they are doing with the banner of Jalaram Charitable Trust. And of course, with that full faith that Bapa has, they have in Jalaram Bapa, God always plans a good human being's journey in a nice way. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now, Minaben, if your wavelength is working, could you please do the final end to the session today? Minaben, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is my pleasant and humble duty to end this session with the heartiest thank you. On behalf of Lalit and myself, we like to thank Pramod Bhai Thakkar and Sanjay Bhai Rugani of Jalaram Temple, Leicester, for supporting us. Our special thank you, Dr. Bijna Kotak Dasani. What a girl. Really love her. And Asandisana to all the viewers on Facebook Live and those who have joined us on Zoom. Can't end my thank you without saying thank you to my cute cousin, Dr. Lalit Soda, and my cute husband around me here. You can meet him. And there is co-host here, Ellie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Asandisana, Habaria Gioni, Kwaheri. We will.
Thank you, Minaben. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to unmute everybody in a minute after going live, after disconnecting the live on Facebook. And then we're going to, anybody who wish to say hello to Bijna and congratulate what she's doing. And also, of course, Sanjay Bhai and Pramod Bhai.
Can we unmute them so that